So you got to wonder what's going on here. So I believe Mr. Miller is very much a fan of good architecture, etc. But also, again, coming as based there, it's a relatively small town. He understands that it's going to be growing. They're going to need to continue to draw talent into the area. And I believe there's some synergies there with the company as to why he wants to build up and make Columbus somewhat of a different type of town to help bring in some additional talent for his company that he ends up running as the president of. So that's how it happens. It is the J. Irwin Miller Foundation that is paying for all the architectural fees from these well-known architects around the world. So it still has to take off, and it does indeed start taking off. And really the first one, so first, even before you get to Columbus, it's about, the city itself is about 2 or 3 miles off of Interstate 65. And as most of us can anticipate, Interstate 65 in middle of Indianapolis or Indiana is fairly flat. So Columbus is almost due south of Indianapolis, about 40 minutes due south of Indianapolis, just to get a reference as to where it is. Indianapolis pretty much being almost exactly in the center of the state, or both east to west, north and south. But you can see right away, getting off the expressway or driving by on the expressway, you can see a bridge that's a little bit different than most of the interstate bridges. And this is the exit here for Columbus. So even right off the bat, you start to see something different about it. While you're still on the interstate, even if you don't stop, just driving by, you start to see something of significance from there. And from there, it continues to grow. This is the bridge between the interstate and the town itself. Still haven't gotten to the city limits. So again, it's not just significant buildings, there's a lot of public art also, and then things like this bridge and some infrastructure that we'll see also changes. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and just talk about one more thing. So there's 7 buildings in Columbus, Indiana that have been recognized as National Historic Landmark Commission buildings, which is pretty extraordinary with the city that size. And then here at the bottom, I just talk about what is a landmark per the National Park Service, which you can read for yourself. But this is how it becomes, continues in significance and influence. So the first building I'd like to talk about is the First Christian Church, and it's done by Elur Saarinen. His son, Errol Saarinen, is probably even better known than his father, but this is the first building of significance that is built in Columbus after this invitation, so to speak, from Mr. Miller. So it's completed in 1942, and it is the first contemporary building in Columbus and one of the first churches of contemporary architecture in the United States. So to the left, we see an aerial view of the church itself, and then the bell tower off to the side. And then on the right of it, the right of it, we see one of the interior views. We're going to see a couple more in a couple of minutes. So these are, I think you can see, in case you're thinking they're monstrosities here, these are light fixtures, and we'll see a better perspective of those in a few minutes. But you can see the church, and is actually, the pews are stepped up or down, however you want to look at it, perspective. So think of it, most churches, everything is flat where all the parishioners are, and it's hard to see up to the altar, even though it's usually a lot higher. So here you can see Mr. Saarinen actually makes it like a stadium as far as the pews escalate. So now here's a look at the front of the church, and you can see it's sort of ingrained with a large stone cross right in the middle of it, almost hidden within the foundation itself. But you can see, if you look at it closely, there is indeed the cross. And then the bell tower itself is 166 feet high. And what's interesting, we talked about it being not only art not only buildings, architecture, but also some art. And this, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but this is on the other side of the street. This is where the public library is, and this is then a piece of public art that's also been purchased by the city itself to help beautify the city. So then going back inside, here is another view, like we said, this stair step stadium style seating for the pews. And then you can see the cross on the inside. Sorry, this picture is a little bit blurry, but the cross on the inside pretty much replicates that cross we saw on the outside of the church in regards to style and function. So any questions or comments about this? Anybody want to talk about it a little bit more?
It was way ahead of their time, wasn't it? They can do all this.
Yeah, I think so. And this is just me personally speaking. I'm sort of surprised there aren't a lot. I haven't seen, but maybe a handful of churches where the congregation, is going to really be able to see up easily. With it being stair stepped, I'm rather surprised that more churches, recently built churches, haven't taken this view. But I guess the thought process, you raise the altar and everybody can see. But I sort of like this perspective even more. And then his son is actually Errol Saarinen, is probably even more famous, at least here in the United States, than his father. And he actually, I believe, has the most buildings designed within Columbus. So this one is was initially the Union Bank and Trust. It has been converted since then, but you can see it's basically a glass and steel building. This was designed in 1954. So Errol Saarinen was born in 1910 and lived until 1961. So he really died relatively young for our common era, so to speak. So he designs this one in 1954, and it has been magnified by another fairly well-known architect, Kevin Roche, and he has added this atrium passing through and then connected it to another building to amplify the size and the use of the building over the years. So a little bit more about Errol. Like I said, his father was also a well-known architect. And one thing that I find interesting about Errol is it's really sort of hard to distinguish. He's built some very significant big buildings in some of those major cities we've talked about, in particular New York, and then also in St. Louis. So, he was the designer of the famous TWA building, New York Airport, also designed the Gateway Art